What's up, YouTube? George's Silver Hunter back, and today we are hunting a box of quarters from our local Fifth Third. So, like most of my pennies, nickels, and quarters, I always pop the top at the bank because a lot of times I will get completely uncirculated rolls of the current year, and those can be very tedious and hard to hunt. So I always open them at the bank to make sure that they are circulated, and this one obviously is. I've just showed you a couple of rolls. I did get a question on one of my last videos about have I ever turned down a box at the bank, especially when they've ordered them specifically for me. And the answer is yes and no. So if it's a bank that I do a lot of business with and I know they've got other boxes or I know they can use them, I have turned them down and said, no, I don't want them. But I have had one bank special order me like a box of nickels, I think, and they were all the 2020 or 2021s, I can't remember, and I took them simply because I felt bad because it was like the first time I had ever ordered with them, or maybe the second time. So the answer is yes and no, but with the banks I do a lot of business with, I do not feel bad at all about declining boxes that they've ordered for me. But they also know what I do, so they weren't real surprised. So anyway, with that said, we are looking for a whole lot of stuff in this box. Mainly the big things we want, silver and W's. There's tons of DDRs and state quarter errors. So we'll be looking for those, and I have a link in the description down below this video to a Google document that has everything that I hunt for, whether they're pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, or half dollars. So check that out. When I do find those errors, I will bring you in under the scope and explain what the error is and why it's important. And a lot of times I try to give you a value on it, so you understand, are we finding a 50-cent coin, a dollar coin, or like a $30 coin? So enough of me yapping, let's jump into this box. So we're on roll number 5, and we have a bit of a surprise. It has been a good long while since I have found a W. This is a West Point mint quarter. These can go from anywhere from about $10 up to about $30 on eBay. This is a 2019. The 2020s have a V75 privy on them, so we know it's a 2019. Let's see which one it is. It is the Wilderness River of No Return. I don't recall if this is one of the more valuable ones on eBay or not, and we'll cover that definitely in a wrap-up, but always excited to see a W. I have found one bicentennial. I pull all my bicentennials as I go through the box, just because I hang on to them and I sell them by the roll on eBay. And I've been pulling everything that I'm going to put under the scope, checking for DDRs and errors, and we'll go through that a little bit later in the video. We're on roll number 10, and I almost pitched this into the discard pile. As I was going through, it looked really shiny. And sometimes when I see the backs, I really don't look at the fronts if I know they're not W's or coins that I'm checking for errors or DDRs. And this one, I just so happened to turn it over, and I looked at it real quick and dropped it, and then picked it up again and looked at it under the scope. And sure enough, we have a San Francisco business strike on this 2018 Minnesota Voyagers quarter. Look how dirty my hands are. Isn't that awful? Coins are dirty. Anyway, beautiful coin. Just getting into roll 26, and to my surprise, I thought it looked shiny when I opened it and laid it out. We have another W. Let me zoom in a little bit. There we go. And you can see this one's going to be a 2020 because we have that V75 privy right there. It's kind of it's a little grimy and dirty, but hopefully you can see that. Let's see what we have. We have a Tallgrass Prairie 2020 W. I will take it. That is 2 W's on the box. I almost threw my San Francisco clad away. As you can see, we've grown our bicentennials a little bit, and I've got a huge stack of coins we will go through at the end for DDRs and errors. So before we get into the wrap-up, I wanted to go through all the final coins I've got to put under the scope and check for DDOs, DDRs, or potential errors. We've got a bunch of the Crossing the Delaware that we'll be looking for the die chip on the hat. We've got some of the 2021 Airmen that have a die chip, I think, in the glasses and on the airplanes. We've got some 1965s here that have potentially a DDO. 66s, we're looking for a DDR. I believe the 70 also has, I believe it's a DDO. I've got to go back and look. We will be looking for the Sixth Claw Alaska, the Spitting Horse, the Extra Cactus Arizona. This homestead has probably the most errors on it. It has about 200 different DDRs. It has a leaky bucket, and it has a snowy roof. There's the Extra Leaf Wisconsin, the Oregon. I think there's a DDR in the trees, and there's a die chip on the island. We're looking for the In God We Rust, Kansas. And let's see here. What do we have left? This Minnesota, I normally get a bunch of these. I didn't have many, and this one's pretty ugly, but there's an extra tree error. And last but not, oh, here they are right here. For some reason, I had two piles. We got some Minnesotas we're going to be checking for that extra tree. So I don't know if I'm going to have any of those things, but we're going to hunt all of these coins. And if I find anything interesting, I will bring you in under the scope, and then we will move in to a wrap-up. So as you saw from the last clip, we have a lot of quarter errors and DDOs and DDRs to go through. And before we did that, I wanted to try to educate you guys, if you were new to coin roll hunting or had never looked at quarter errors before, what we are looking for and what some of these things look like. So we're going to start with 1965 and move forward to current day. The 1965 Philly DDO, a DDO stands for double die obverse, and it's where you have lettering or objects on the coin that are in fact doubled. And there are telltale markers of a double die obverse. And in the 1965, it's mainly in the word Liberty. You can see here we've got two L's. You can see a little bit of a second L peeking through. The B, you can obviously see two B's. The R, you know, there's another serif. You can tell this isn't machine doubling. This is actually a double die because there's two R's. It's one R on top of the other. Same with the T and same with the E. And the Y is really obvious. So this is the kind of markers we're looking for in a DDO. It just so happens in the 65, it presents itself in the word Liberty. When we look at the 66, it's a DDR, which stands for double die reverse, and it's mainly in the words United and States. If we get in real close, you again see the doubling in the serifs on the S. So this is obviously two S's, obviously two T's. You know, here's another double S, double E, double R. So this is what we're looking for, mainly focusing on the words United and States. In the 70D DDO, we have a lot of, and it even says up here, strong spread on date, In God We Trust, and ERTY of Liberty. When I look at the picture examples, I think it's actually pretty hard in the word Liberty. But when we get down here into the date, you can clearly see we've got kind of a 9 on top of a 9. We've got two 7s. We've got two 0s. Definitely two 1s. And the rest of the words, they're just bolder. They're wider. They're stronger. So you know, when I look at these 70s, I mainly look at the date, and then I do quickly look at the rest of the lettering to see if it's fatter than most of the lettering I'm used to seeing. Moving on now to the 99 Spitting Horse. It's caused by a die crack, and it looks like a horse is spitting. I have found a few of these in the past, so we might get lucky and find one of these today. By the way, I have never found a 65, 66, or 70, because the ones I get are usually so beat up, it's actually pretty hard to tell if there's doubling. Moving on to the Wisconsin, it is a extra leaf error, and it presents itself down here at the bottom of the stalk usually, and sometimes it actually shoots up from the bottom to this main leaf. I've never found one of these, and I really hope to one day. We have a couple of these to look at. This is the bison. This is the Kansas quarter, and there are 3 errors on this one. Here's just one from eBay. This isn't a sold listing, but there is an In God We Rust error where if you look at the front where it says In God We Trust, usually the T is very faint or gone altogether. I've actually found these where the I, the G, and the T are missing, and those are actually a little bit more valuable. The other 2 errors I'll try to show you here on this coin. It's where there's an extra die chip here on the top of the bison's back. So if you look at where I'm circling the little hand, it usually presents itself there, and you can see it on the zoom in. And the spitting bison looks just like the spitting horse. It's where there's a die crack coming out of the bison's mouth. So those are the 3 things we look for in the Kansas quarters. I believe, which one is this one? This is the Minnesota. This one's really hard to see. I think I said there was a die chip on the island, and I still think there is one of those. I couldn't find a good picture for you. This is a DDR, so we have a little bit of doubling on the lower right-hand corner of the island. I've never found one of these, so I usually go through these pretty quickly. We are now getting into the Minnesota, and this is the extra tree. This one's considered a DDR as well, but you can see there's a hunk of extra metal here over between the trees that present themselves above the fishermen, and it's just sort of a floating tree out there that's not supposed to be there. Another sign you can look for on the front of the quarter is if there's a big giant die crack through the bust of Washington. That's another way to help identify where you might have a DDR. The Sixth Claw Alaska, honestly, I've stopped looking for these. This guy wants $14.90. I don't think he's ever going to get it. The most I've ever gotten is a couple, $2 or $3, and that was for one in BU condition. But it's where there's an extra hunk of metal that presents itself between the 5 claws that are supposed to be there. Honestly, this is not rare at all. This guy says it's rare. At one point, I had probably 100 of these, and I ended up turning them back into the bank because I couldn't get more than $1 or $2 for them, and they just weren't moving very fast. So I still look for them from time to time, but after I find one, I stop looking. We're moving on to the Arizona. This is called the extra cactus error, and it's where there's a die chip that ends up underneath the artist's initials, beneath the cactus on the reverse of the coin. That die chip can be very thin like this, or it could be almost a whole extra cactus completely covering the initials. Obviously, the value is tied to how big that extra cactus is. I've found lots and lots of these as well. Very common one, easy to find. The Homestead Quarter has the most DDRs. This is probably the easiest one to find. The DDRs mainly present themselves in the windows of the door. Keep a special eye out for ones that they're called reflection errors, where this pump handle ends up doubled in the windows. There's big money in these. The ones with the windows, usually $1 or $2, sometimes less. The Homestead has 2 other errors that you want to look for. One being the leaky bucket. I've found many of these and shown them off on my channel, but it's caused by a die chip underneath the bucket and or underneath the water pump. So as you can see, this guy wants $3. I usually get $1 to $3 for them. Again, I don't try to move too many. You know, I'll put a listing of 3 to 5 of them on eBay, and sometimes they'll sit for a month before I sell one. But they're still easy to find and kind of interesting to find. The other Homestead Quarter error is called the snowy roof. It is caused by a die chip where extra metal is left on the roof, and it can be anywhere on the roof line. This particular one has just a little bit on the edge. I have found them where that die chip goes up one entire side or the other side of the roof. And again, the value is tied to how much metal is left. We are finally to the 2021s. This is sort of the holy grail of what we're looking for with the 2021 Washington Quarter, and it's where you have a giant die chip on top of the hat. You can see this guy got $102 for this one. Most of these, it's just a small little piece of metal left somewhere around the top of Washington's hat. I've got about a dozen of those. I want to say I've sold them for a couple of bucks each, maybe $2, $3 each. I would love to find me one like this, though, where I could get $102 for it. Last but not least is a die chip error on the Airman Quarter, and they present themselves on one or both planes. Again, value is tied to how big that die chip is on the plane. I have found these in the past, or that die chip will present itself on the glasses of the Airman, and those go for a lot less, as you can see. And again, I think they would be worth more if you found a bigger die chip. So those are all the quarters we're going to be looking for. Apologies if you knew all this, but for those of you that are new to coin roll hunting or hunting quarters, I think it's important you know this, because this can turn, you know, a skunk box into at least something you could earn a couple of bucks for. And there's a lot of errors to find. This is just the tip of the spear. This is the basic stuff that I hunt for. There's a lot more DDRs and DDOs out there, but what I just showed you are the things that most hunters look for because they're easier to find. Now I'm going to get all these quarters under the scope, and I will bring you in when we find some errors. So we cruised right on through the 65s, the 66s, the 70s, the spitting horses. We are all the way up to the 2005 Kansas, and we were looking for that humpback error, the spitting bison, or the In God We Rust. And we happened to find two errors. They are the same, but they are different quality coins. The first is a In God We Rust, and that T is barely visible. In that light, you can make it out. You can see it right here. But that is just shadowing, because if I move it so that the shadows change, that T almost completely vanishes. So this would qualify as an In God We Rust error. I wanted you guys to see what it looked like live. This is not the prettiest coin in the world. However, after you see the next one, you will realize this one's probably the nicer of the two. So this is the second one. Here you can see it as the Kansas Bison. And here we are with another In God We Rust. The T, again, barely visible. The G looks like it's peeling off, but this would also qualify as an In God We Rust. But this coin is in pretty beat up condition. Washington looks like he's been through quite the fist fight. Anyway, we're going to move on now to the Oregon quarters. So we've gotten to the 2008 Alaska quarters, and I wanted to put one under the scope so you can see what it's supposed to look like. We have 5 very distinct claws, and just so you guys know, I only had 4 of these to look at. Maybe it was 5, but 4 or 5 of these to look at. But this is what the claw is supposed to look like. Here's what a version of the 6th claw looks like that we found in this hunt. And you can see here, there's just a little piece of metal that has come through, being the 6th claw. Again, you'd be lucky to get 50 cents to $1 for this coin, but I just wanted to show you I literally had 4 of these to look at. So if you had 100 or 200 of these in a box, you would find a whole bunch of these. So we finished going through the 2021s, and we had a surprisingly high number of finds, and I'm going to take you over to the computer and put all these under the scope and walk through them very, very quickly. We are going to start with the 2021 Airman, and I'm going to start with just a regular 2021 Airman just to show you what it's supposed to look like. This one is not a great find, but just so you can see the goggles up there, and actually let me turn off my other overhead so we don't get the little sparkly lights. But notice the goggles are nice and clean. Let me move the mouse here. All along here. We did find a 2021 Airman with a very, very small die chip on here. Right there. Now there's some gunk and garbage on the quarter. I don't think this would command a lot of money, but it is in fact a die chip. So I'm going to hang on to this. It's probably only worth a couple of bucks, maybe $1 or $2. I'll put an eBay listing on here that's at least remotely similar to this, just so you can get an idea of the value. So moving on to the Washington quarters, I showed you earlier in the video what we're kind of looking for. We're looking for any kind of die chip that's up and around this hat area. And I did a video some time ago where I went through an entire box of 2021 Crossing the Delawares and found what potentially could be a DDR, but really didn't find any of these big die chip errors. And today I found 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different die chip errors. So here's one. You can see, and I'll try to turn this a little bit around in the light here and there. We've got a big hunk of metal here from a die chip back here in the back of the hat. So that's number 1. And many of these quarters are actually in pretty darn good shape. This one's very, very similar. Same location. Die chip there in the back of the hat. Here's number 3. A bigger die chip. This actually looks like a little golf ball here on the back of the hat. That's number 3. Here's number 4. This one looks more like, I don't know, a little flat rock that you might skip across a lake. And this one also has, and I've got a couple of these as well, what I believe to be a die clash error. And I'll show that a little bit later. So I think this one has both, and I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments down below what you think. But I think this is a little bit of a strike through or a die clash error, because this line right here actually will map up to the lines in the neck. And I'll show you that later. I'm going to put that one separate because I think it has both. Here we are with, again, same location, an even bigger little chunk of metal there. That's number 4. Same thing. Number 5. So this one's very, very small. If I were to just let any of these go, it would probably be this one. This one just has a very small piece of metal there from the die chip. That must have been before it got really bad. This was one that I pulled aside because we actually had a little bit of extra metal here on the hat, and I had not seen that before. I'm going to do a little bit more research on this to see if this is important in any way, shape, or form. And this quarter in particular is a little bit beat up, so this is another one that I may just let go of and put back in circulation. But I had just not seen any that had this particular piece of metal on it. I'll put that one to the side as well. We have 2 more. This is probably the biggest one. If I get a decent amount of money for any of these, it will likely be this one, or the one that's got both the die chip and that die clash in it. But this is a nice big die chip on the back of Washington's hat here. I'm going to keep that one separate. And last but not least, this is like many of the other ones we have seen. So that was a lot of Washington errors. I did pull 2 aside, and this is in my longer video. Oh, look, we got a little bit of that die clash there on this one too. There's a lot of people that are saying if you get this little line in the hat right here and it extends down into the eyebrow, that this is a DDR. I have refuted that in a previous video. I don't believe this is a DDR, but I pulled this one just to show you that these are pretty common when you go through Washington quarters. Now, finding one that also has this little bit of a die clash here, if that's in fact what this is, could be special, so I'm going to hang on to this one. And I can't remember if this one also, yep, here it is again with that line. So I had 2 of these that I kind of pulled out because they were really good examples, and this one's actually a pretty decent looking quarter. So those were all the finds we had within the 2021. Actually, that's not true. I have 2 left. More of this die clash business. So this is actually the one I showed you a minute ago. This is the last one right here. Look at this one. This one just jumps right out at you. So it starts about here, comes down, and loops in here right around the chin. Not any of it. I went through over $50 worth of Washington quarters. As you saw, I had 2 or 3 of them that look like this. And online, I did find a website that superimposes the reverse of the quarter on the face of the quarter to show you what you might see. And you can, as I told you, the part of this neck, now mine, it's a little higher, and that could just be from a change in the strike, right? But this looks very reminiscent of what I have on my quarters. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below if you disagree. But there it is. It's a little bit higher. Theirs starts here at the chin, but it's the same basic shape. And I haven't been able to tell if anything else is coming through on the quarter, but it's definitely visible right there on the nose or near the nose. So anyway, let's move into a wrap-up. I've got a lot of these 2021s. I'm going to throw up a few things that I found on screen from eBay. We can argue about whether or not I'll really get that amount of money for these things, but just to show you how much potential value there was in this box of quarters. So bringing you guys in for a wrap-up and a quick look at value, this was quite a productive box of quarters. We did end up with 7 bicentennial D-mint marks. I did check all those for the DDO. Didn't have one. We had 5 Philadelphia bicentennials. As I said, I usually do these by the roll, and I usually make, it's been a while since I've sold one, but I was making about 15 bucks a roll, so about $5 profit per roll. So I just hang on to these and offload them kind of willy-nilly on eBay. We did have our 2 W's of the box that were awesome finds. It's been a while since I've had some W's. In the condition that these guys are each in, I would probably list them on eBay, and for the tall grass, I would hopefully get around $14 for it, more if I got lucky. The Wilderness W, I would hope to get around $11 or $12 for it. The Business Strike Minnesota coin is a really, really pretty coin. It is circulated, but it's in really, really good shape. Unfortunately, I don't think I'd be able to get any more than maybe 50 cents for it. It's not something I would sell. I'm just going to flip it up and note that I found it in a coin roll hunt. The Ingadwi rust airs are a little bit all over the place. I took an average. These things can command up to about $8 a piece. I've seen some go higher. I've seen some go lower. I kind of averaged it out and said, if I could get $8 a piece for those, that would be fantastic. So we're talking about $16 here. The Six Claw Alaska, some people are getting as low as about $1 and as high as $2 to $3. So I'd say, on average, maybe a $2 coin. I don't know how because I have so many of them. And I'll have some eBay overlays as I talk about these just so you guys know I'm not making this stuff up. The Airman coin with this tiny little die chip on it, probably about $2. And then all the Washingtons, they're all over the place. This was the DDR. I didn't put a value on it because there's been nothing that has sold lately. The die chip with the die clash, we're talking about $4 or $5. These guys that just have that die clash on it, assuming I'm right, they were going for about $4 a piece, maybe $5 a piece. So you're talking $12 to $15 here. The little die chip on the hat that we went through, I think you could easily get maybe $2.50, $3 a piece for each one of these. So you're talking maybe $12.50 to $14, $15 for these 5 coins. The medium die chip, we've got 2 of these. Figure a couple $5 for these, so maybe $10 between the 2. And then, of course, with the larger die chip, you could probably get around $8 for it on average. So if you were to add up everything we have here, minus what I think I could get out of the bicentennials, we are talking about $92.50, give or take, in value off of the quarters found in this box, which I think is pretty darn good. If you disagree with me on these prices, or if you think that, the condition of these coins might adversely affect those values, let me know in the comments down below. I've just taken this based on what I found on eBay. I didn't spend a lot of time looking at, were these coins in much better condition than the ones I have or not. They were really just to get an idea of what the coins might be worth. This was a really fun quarter box hunt, probably one of my favorite in a long, long time because we had so many finds and some good value in it. So apologies if the video is a little bit long, but this was a ton of fun for me. I hope you guys learned something and also found how lucrative it can be to hunt quarters. We didn't find any silver, but numismatically, there's a lot to be had in a box of quarters. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you haven't subscribed to the channel already, consider heading down below this video, clicking that subscribe button, and then click on that bell and select all so you get notified each and every time I release a new video. While you're down there, go ahead and crush that like button and leave me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. After that, I hope you guys are doing well. I've got a lot more videos coming. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care.